Latch the windows, lock the doors, and put the kids to bed. It's time for another episode of
Tales from the Garage!
Okay, so here I am again with another totally off-the-cuff, unprepared video for the most part. Been a couple days, so I thought I would do another one. Saturday, early evening, dinner time right now. Got a lot of things I could talk about. But I thought since this is new, I thought I would just make mention of the fact that yesterday, Friday, in the mail, I received my DVD of the documentary John Abercrombie, Open Land, Meeting John Abercrombie. 90 minutes. Just came out this past week. This was something that was filmed shortly before John passed away. Of course, no one knew that at the time. And John died a year ago this month. Passed away August 2017. Late August. So the documentary was done filming, but it took another year to edit it, get it mastered, etc., etc. So, of course, John never saw it. I'm assuming his wife has. And it was, I spoke about this in my last videos without having seen it. Honestly, it was a little bit better than I expected. I anticipated there being a lot of music performances. And in a 90-minute documentary, let's face it, he's a musician. There's a lot of recorded music you can listen to. I'd much rather hear the man speak, see him interviewed, etc., etc. But surprisingly, there wasn't a whole lot of time spent on music performances. They did spend a lot of time interviewing John and talking about him and doing exactly what is a particular favorite thing of mine. I like to see where a musician lives. I like to see his home. I like to see the town that he lives in to kind of get the vibe of the atmosphere of the place where the artist creates his work, which is why I like to see their home and the studio that they have and everything. So you get to see, the things that I've wanted to see, which is like John's music room in his house. And even on the preview online that I saw, there's the one clip of John playing piano at his home, mainly as a composing tool. And it surprised me that he was as good a pianist as he is, because he very rarely, on I think only 2 occasions that I know of, played any keyboards at all on any sessions. And he could have, to me, he might not be as good a pianist as Ralph Towner, but he could have done that type of album where he plays guitars and overdubs keyboards on top of it. But John was very kind of down on his own abilities as a pianist. But I was pretty impressed by his playing. He was playing one of his, kind of demonstrating one of his songs that he wrote. And he certainly was not stumbling all over the keyboard. And it really made me wish that he had done more in the way of solo albums, or even albums where he didn't use the keyboard player, but he played the keyboard as well as the guitar parts himself. Looking at where John lived too, his death, being a huge fan of his since about 1978. His passing really affected me, not just because I was a big fan of his music, but because I knew he lived roughly in my neck of the woods. Looking at the town that he was living in at the time that he passed away, it's anywhere from about 30 to 40 something miles away from where I live. So it's not that far. Actually, probably a little bit farther than I thought. But at one point he did live a bit closer to where I live in northern New Jersey here. But he was one of those guys, and Jack DeJohnette is the other one, that whenever I take a trip or go anywhere north from here, as I'm getting into New York State, which is all of 5 minutes away from where I am, I'm always kind of on the lookout for guys that look like Jackie Jeanette or John Abercrombie in their cars when I'm on the highway or something, or like trips I made to the Woodstock area. Jackie Jeanette actually lives in Woodstock, so I've made maybe a half a dozen trips to Woodstock in the past, and the actual town of Woodstock. And I'm always kind of was looking out all those years for Jack DeJohnette specifically, because I know he has lived there for many years. And Carla Bley lives there, at least part-time, Carla Bley and Steve Swallow. Though I think they're spending a lot more time in Europe now. So I'm glad to report that there's no extras on the disc, like I was kind of hoping for, that there might be some additional interview segments, something like that. But there's not. But I kind of knew that because a good friend of mine did pick up the DVD a few days before me and kind of filled me in. So it's just really the documentary itself. And my computer's doing funky things. I just saw a black screen pop up, so whether or not this is going to play back correctly or with errors, I'm not sure. So, what can I say about the documentary? Definitely, it's a must-get for Abercrombie fans. I've never seen his wife prior to this. There's a little short jam session in his home with a few musicians, with a trio. And strangely enough, in his music room, I didn't see the piano, so the piano must have been in a different part of his house. The segment with him playing piano it doesn't appear to be in the music room, because the music room is this kind of big open room, or not very big, but an open room, and the upright piano isn't there, which I thought was a strange choice to not have the piano in the room where your friends come to jam over, because if you got a keyboard player, what are they going to play? But John Abercrombie was one of those guys that I've now personally one of my projects that I want to do, and I've wanted to do for years, is I've wanted to do interviews with musicians, or at least some of my favorite musicians. And what I would like to do is kind of do like a Skype or an old, I haven't worked out the technical aspect of it yet. Just a phone conversation with them, where I record the conversation and then put it up with no visuals, which would basically sound like a podcast, but I don't think I would bother putting it up as a podcast, because who's going to subscribe to a podcast? There's very few people. I would just put it up as a video here on YouTube, kind of thing. And I've wanted to kind of do an interview series where I would love to talk to favorite musicians that I know their works, and I could really question them about like specific albums, that kind of thing. And oddly enough, the guy that was the guy that I really thought one of my ultimate goals was John Abercrombie, and now that's too late. So I would love to do Jack DeJohnette as well. But for some reason, I had John Abercrombie kind of very high on the list. Now, there's other people that I'd love to interview and talk to, like at Eberhard Weber and all that, but that's a whole different thing, because it's not somebody that I don't think I could ever manage to get a hold of in Europe, for one thing. And I'm still overcoming the biting of my tongue. If you saw my last video, I did a number on the back of my tongue biting that thing, and I'm still having trouble with some words. So the Meeting John Abercrombie DVD, definitely worth it. Thank you, Jeff, for sending it to me. I knew I couldn't wait long to see this, and it's going to get many more views. And another DVD that I was actually watching just prior to this was something that's been out for a lot of years. The late saxophone player Art Pepper. It's about 49-minute documentary that very similarly was done in the early 1980s, I think about 1981. Art Pepper wrote a book called Straight Life. He wrote his autobiography, and it apparently sold very well. And for a lot of years, and it may still be my actual favorite book of all time, It's a book that I would go to and reread certain sections of over the years, and I still continue to do that. Yes, after the success of Art Pepper's book, a filmmaker got an idea to do a documentary. Now, why he didn't do it as a full-length movie, I don't know. But he ended up doing this like 48, 49-minute documentary called Notes from a Jazz Survivor. And it played quite a lot on the PBS stations back in the mid-1980s. Now, Art died in 1982, and I think the book was first published around 1981. So there was this short window of time between the publication of the book, which Art Pepper talks about in the documentary, and Art's passing. So just like the John Abercrombie documentary, unbeknownst to the filmmaker who was making the Art Pepper documentary, they're interviewing Art Pepper very much at the end of his life. Because in the documentary, Art Pepper does talk about the publication of Straight Life, the book, and people's reaction to it. And seeing that he died in June of 1982, and the copyright date on the Art Pepper Notes from a Jazz Survivor movie is from 1982. So this was something that was recorded, just like the John Abercrombie thing, certainly within a year of his passing. And that one I highly recommend as well. Now, I think that's still available on DVD. I think it came out initially on VHS tape. And I know in 1999 it was released on DVD. So, that's 19 years ago now. I bought my copy a number of years ago. But it's also worthwhile. The Notes from a Jazz Survivor, Art Pepper, is another, like the John Abercrombie thing. I should have brought the DVD here. I didn't think to do it. I saw the interior of Art Pepper's home where he was living, and interviews with his wife, very much toward the end of his life, and there's some footage of him playing a club date in California where he lived. Quite interesting, and even more interesting if you've read Straight Life, Art Pepper's book, because you see things that were referenced maybe in the book, and they're not going to actually point them out in the film. It's something that you kind of have to know, and of course the book goes into a lot more detail than a 49-minute film could. But I watched both of these documentaries yesterday, and definitely a bittersweet feeling now for two artists that I very much like that have passed away. But at very least, we have some reasonable quality documentaries on them. Like I said, I don't know why the Art Pepper one runs the length that it does of 48, 49 minutes. I don't know if the original intent was to make maybe something that was roughly an hour for like a public television, or whether it was meant to be so short. I don't know. With Art Pepper's life, you could have easily made a 2.5 hour documentary film, no problem. But bittersweet, because I love these artists. They're both gone now, and I think it hits home a little bit more when you could see them in their home element, and you see them at home. Makes them seem like real people a bit more than maybe just an image on an LP or on a CD or something like that. So that's just my thoughts. If you don't know Art Pepper, maybe you should go online. There's a lot of his albums posted up on YouTube. He's somebody more from the mainstream bebop era and a type of music, but he's done some wonderful albums, including one called Winter Moon, which is a thing with orchestra, which is real nice. And I'm wondering. I didn't know I was even going to talk about Art Pepper. The documentary Notes from a Jazz Survivor may even be up. I don't know. It might even be up on YouTube. It's fairly old. It's from 1982 now. So I'm wondering if somebody posted that, whether or not it would get pulled down for copyright I'm not sure, and being that it's not a full-length movie too, there's a limited number of places to see it. I guess you could stream it off of Amazon, but I'd highly recommend it. So what I'm going to do here, I've gone on for 15 minutes already. Again, I'm still at the point where I'm playing around with my settings and controls here, and because I got a black screen before and my tongue is still acting up here, I'm not sure whether this video is going to come out at all or not. I think I'm going to do one vinyl pull here, just to bring this to a reasonable length, and hope that oh, there's people walking by my door. It's only dinner time here. I can hear people having a conversation just beyond my garage door. It's been raining all day here, on and off, which actually has cooled things down quite a bit. So it makes it bearable. It's very muggy in here, but it makes it bearable versus the last time I was in here when it was hot as hell and I couldn't wait to get out of here. Let me do a vinyl pull. Oh, I don't know what to pick. I think I got 2 albums here. I could try to pull just one out of there. Oh, I didn't even know this was back there. Well, I talked about him not long ago, and I don't have this one on CD, and I don't think it's on CD, and I'm looking at it now. I really want it because this was one of my 2 favorite albums by another person who's passed away, Lorindo Almeida, the nylon string classical jazz guitarist. This one is called Artistry and Rhythm, recorded April 1983. Lorindo's not with us anymore. He's got 2 albums that I particularly love. He's got many more, but just talking about the ones that I have. And of course, he was the guitarist in the LA4, which was a great group, and unfortunately all the members have since passed away, which had Bud Shank was in the group on horns and Ray Brown on bass. That was a great group, and West Coast guys. This one is a trio, which is the 2 albums I actually have by Lorindo Almeida that are my favorites are both trio recordings with upright bass and drums. This one has Bob Magnuson on bass and Milt Holland on drums and percussion, and of course Lorindo on the classical guitar. Recorded April 1983. This was on Concord Records. Concord Records is still around, but it seems to me that they're trying to become more of a pop label now, and it seems like they're almost totally ignoring all the great jazz albums that they put out in like the 70s and early 80s, because they are not keeping them reissued on CD. It's almost like the label doesn't exist. They're really kind of going in a pop jazz direction now, and I wish they would keep their old stuff in print, because they have absolute classic albums in print, like the Charlie Bird album that I pulled out. Was that Concord? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was on Concord, the live album. That's just a fantastic album. So this one, there's not really, I don't see, there's a couple originals. The title track, Artistry and Rhythm, is a Stan Kenton track. And most of the other tracks I'm not familiar with in other versions. So I don't know if they're, I don't think there's so much jazz standards. They're not pop songs, but I don't think they're jazz standards as much. There's a bossa nova vibe to this album. I really want to hear this now, and I really want to get the CD of this, but it probably did come out on CD at one point, but I'm sure it's long gone. The one interesting track that's done here, which I don't recall what it sounds like now, is he does the Chariots of Fire theme from the Vangelis track, from the Chariots of Fire movie. That's probably the only track that most people would be familiar with, unless you're into old time jazz and you might know Stan Kenton's music. like I said, I think I only see one original here. And there may be a few things here from Brazilian composers that I'm not familiar with, since Lorindo is from Brazil. He played in Stan Kenton's orchestra in 1947, and he's one of the guys that introduced bossa nova to America in those late 50s, early 60s. I didn't realize this album was back there. I kind of forgot I had this album. I knew I had more than one. I've got another album of his, which I'm guessing is probably back there. Still having issues with my tongue here. And I think it's called Chamber Jazz. I'll pull that out one of these. That might have even been the second one that was that I pulled out there, that I kind of pushed back in the batch there. But gee, I got to find this on CD now. I love this. Well recorded. It's the early 80s. It's probably early digital recording, but studio recording. The nylon string and the upright bass, and the drum kit. I just love that combination. And he's a great guitarist. I want to get more of his stuff. Even though I have quite a bit, not quite everything by the LA4 that he was in, but I do have most of their albums. Okay, I'm gonna. There's a picture of him on the back. To whatever extent you can see that. Yeah, well, I'm still kind of experimenting, and I'm going to stop this now because the screen was doing some funny things before when I was recording, so I don't even know if this is coming out. So I'm going to end it here on this Saturday early evening. I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for watching my videos, and I'll be back to yak, yak, yak very soon, okay? Take care, everybody.
Tune in next time for more
Tales from the Garage.